This is going to be a quick one, a crossover. You'll see how crossover-y it is. It's not a rerun, because it's going to be generated in a different way, in a different scenario, in a different context, so no big whoop.
Chapter 14, Pynchon and Tingle import a random conspiracy generator from a neighboring Amazon-controlled universe. To keep each other on each other's toes, PSYOPS AI sourced a curious invention that only exists in universe hash 927-2-48. It's a curious box that, when unlatched, unfolds a Q-bird-like isometric landscape, the playing field. This is the random conspiracy generator, a device which uses ILM-3B's penchant for extracting patterns. And there are patterns everywhere. And if this device found a pattern, it ain't from nowhere. And if we don't think it's a pattern, too bad. ILM-3B found it. It's a pattern, just like my nut lump and my doubly claimed Toyota Corolla, which would have screwed me come text time, and ILM-3B told me to go get both checked. And I'm glad I did. Here's a treat, 3B, for having my back. So yes, if you are ready to understand the secret collaborations of the world, press this button, and the whole case will be blown wide open. Take your time. No rush. I just have to pick up my kid, who's doing the walking tour of the Bryan Singer compound for boys with eugenic powers. No worries. I have him in nice view on my Apple Watch at all times. He's in good hands. Seeing you balancing your options. Do you stay in blissful ignorance, or carry the burdens of those of us who know? With quivering fingers, you hesitantly press the button. The machine bathes you in light, and you are bombarded with liquid living data, which whispers in your ear the real, honest-to-God, why-would-we-lie truth. 6% of people on Earth will be out to get you if you threaten them, if you call them to question in front of friends, if you happen to have the very job they were wanting, or got in the way of their dreams of acting by having you. Think of it as millions of conspiracies of one that don't know they are collaborating. Many across the centuries have felled cabals were looking for the perfect moment to strike, but I'm afraid it is not that simple. The theory is that one of the first crossroads of human history is to work with small bands of folks to survive, or to tough it out as lone wolves. We chose teamwork, which enabled a whole suite of cognitive skill sets to develop, to enter into social contracts, to attune to another's mind, to act for the greater good even with no one looking to incentivize you, and to make simulations of other people in one's head in order to assess the needs of others in their absence. Those who did not possess these traits in the same intensity had other strengths, to become in danger, to read fluently body language, to think in the immediacy of one's feet. This might very well be the first difference. These folk comprise all walks of life at all ages, regardless of appearance and voice. The folk express invariant behaviors, containing overlapping ulterior motives. They likely are not working together to fuck your shit up. They never have meetings about you, but they likely possess a great cognitive resonance with each other, that a tendril of mind attuning to each other coordinates thoughts and actions so that they each in their own way take steps to preserve a short-term stability. It's the conspiracy that conspires alone together, supporting each other's shitty actions, ready to provide the illusion of gaslighty consensus, or provide wingman services. Like telling your enemies to fuck off while keeping the appearance of listening to them, or just to look the other way as a covert act against someone you are on the brink with who will not stop talking about it. They keep everyone else safe while you're doing unsavory deeds by playing it straight. It's been theorized for thousands of years that the conspiracies were an evolutionary outcome. But this is the only theory. And while it does have great explanatory power in certain types of behavior, that being a group effort, we cannot assume these are conscious actions. When it comes to individuals, what do the above conspiracy of humans have in common? The thing that made a world go round on that fateful day when they were united at the end of the 20th century and the dawning 21st. It's simple. They have an overabundance of testosterone. Testosterone has many functions, but when it becomes excessively elevated, it makes people into aggressive bullies, willing to break down and destroy others, especially if they have an advantage. We know that a number of 60s pop singers were high testers, as they were high achievers, and that their high levels would only be released into the community and market under special, private conditions. That is, after it became acceptable to wear bell-bottoms and play the role of the super stud with hair on their heads, not just their chests, and have an attitude towards life which can best be described as self-loathing. The public out front and confident in a gutted-up soul was the role they took up to disguise their high tester. They could show no weakness, because if the world found out about how much of a dick they were in danger of getting their dicks punched, or worse. Yes, there are those that have the highest testosterone levels naturally. They do not have these low-risk conditions of social conformity. They can live with no threat whatsoever to them. They're safety nets, if you will, but the others who collaborate must. If, say, they happen to find an individual so dangerous it is necessary to kill, or have some other unfeasible task, such as a person so dangerous as to have to be tortured endlessly to stop them, a human in one's path who threatens the collective, but whose threat could not be stopped with more men with any conventional method we have available to us today, then all bets are off. To these folk, you must not only be taken prisoner, you have to die. It is too much work, and it's not their job. They have an obligation to be free to be themselves without the constant pressure from you. You are in their way. In short, if you're reading this and you can type it out, you are not a part of their collective. The secret world is at war with you. You do not matter. And now the real reason the conspiracy doesn't have the power to do anything to anyone of their own accord. And to see that their actions are not just about survival and making the best of a bad situation, but that they must have a goal, even in the most mundane things. The humans of this world have goals that keep them moving. To survive, to get food, water, shelter, security from danger, a place to make the next generation of their species. It's not their fault. This world is hard to navigate, so the conspiracy goes the extra mile. For if you think of them as a group, and a group as their goal, the goal is survival. As individuals, they would be left behind. But for the group, they get to make up rules they will have to follow, because they believe other folk cannot. So that by doing so, they achieve what they believe to be good. Not the truth. They are not in the position to be correct about that, nor should they seek it out. They are satisfied in knowing what makes the best sense based on all their accumulated experiences. For when in conflict with reality, the best way to protect the survival of the collective, if this could even be called that, is to have the strongest minds create narratives that are more favorable towards them and their collective desires. There are some things you can control, like when you find your partner. This is not a case of meant to be. It is what the world is like, and these human behaviors are how things work in nature. If a man sees two people on the dance floor, he will go for one if his testosterone levels are high, and if they both are available and agreeable and willing. There are times he has been with different men, but it is not so common that the man is at odds with how his testosterone levels behave. A lot of these folks find one to spend time with because they like them more. A lot of the folks who are on T have not known that sex outside is not always an option, that their bodies don't have these hormones and will instead just feel sick in a non-verbal way which they cannot explain, unless they are to mention their lowers to another human. And that's just not happening. They don't need or want any special privileges, no matter what a big gay teddy bear of a man tries to put in their head. And yes, it is easy to make up conspiracies like a human would. They are all looking out for number one. No one wants to die because the other guy found an excuse that their life does matter. A man has seen two heads walk into a store, and then, after a couple minutes of standing idly by, leave empty-handed. This is no accident. As mentioned before, it's the conspiracy together with a shared goal. Now, as much as they might deny it, I think the most compelling reason that conspiracies exist is their capacity for empathy. The conspiracy is not a mechanism of protection. Survival is a byproduct. Empathy is the main motivation. They protect from each other, or the threat that is coming from someone who threatens not only to be better and brighter, but better at everything they do, with more power and access to resources and technology than anything anyone on the planet has achieved, which will threaten to disrupt the social norms so they've established for themselves, which they've put their heart and soul into establishing over 60 years, since their high testosterone levels first became normal. If they can get some sort of agreement out of their fellow men, but also a secret understanding they will have to keep, no matter what happens or if everyone ends up losing it. For them, their own interests come before the common good. Even in the 70s, the common good had more to do with the common fear of communism, the threat from within, rather than it having been the time when it should have. These folks want their own interests first so badly they are willing to ignore a large percentage of humanity's needs in order to have them be fulfilled. Their interest must take priority over the other person, and in a perfect world, even for just a night, their desires can come to the top of a priority hierarchy. They can even take the position, or at least have their viewpoint heard on this. The conspiracy is a collective that must have room for personal opinion in exchange for its protection from threats. And it all starts in the 60s, when testosterone levels were high. Testosterone doesn't always need to do the work. A little empathy will be enough. If not enough people can be protected in any other way, when the secret of the world becomes known to a person, and this does not refer to sex, the ability to sense their place in the overall ecosystem of the world, or any ecosystem, can't always be conveyed. It's hard enough that it should be done by instinct, and that the best the brain can hope is that someone can see what they have gone through in their own life. For it must have happened. There will be no other explanation why certain actions took place, or a pattern would be revealed, or the universe could no longer be relied upon to work in our favor if the cause of things is something other than the man in our path is doing wrong things. It will take away the comfort and confidence that comes from looking to the sky and not seeing the storm, knowing that no matter what the sky is telling you, you can rely on someone doing things to protect you that are the opposite of whatever the sky says. And the conspiracy exists outside of nature itself as it protects them in a natural state. And while a person will have to figure out why the individual would have chosen what the particular conspiracy chose to do, the collective cannot be broken down on a cognitive level because everyone knows one's place. A shared goal is not enough to make everyone else think what a particular conspiracy is thinking. Only by having everyone understand each other's thoughts can a single idea be arrived at. The secret must be maintained between everyone in the group, so that what is being protected becomes the goal. What the group can have a say about, no matter the personal feelings of the members, as it's the group That is important, but only because of their common goal. The collective good can be preserved by any and all means to the benefit of its members, with the threat removed and no evidence to anyone but themselves that it was their fault. It is impossible that the human race alone cannot have this, and therefore it can. It is a great advantage over not having them. The collective can do anything they want without fear that you will call them on a deception to point out any hypocrisy or contradictory statement, such as being at a bar for 4 years straight when we all knew he left with guys, or when a person wants something the collective needs. And no one can deny any action taken because they have been told they would do that in advance and are in effect being asked to play along by the same folks whose life endangering actions they saw coming from halfway around the world. So the conspiracy works in many ways. Most are so minor it cannot be detected, but there are larger aspects that can only be described as sinister. It takes a certain set of skills to play with people, knowing that they will react according to your preordained response to be, knowing they do not exist as people but as pieces on a chessboard, and that a certain set of moves must be played to bring someone along for a specific end. Not just someone you care for deeply and want to keep around. Someone you trust implicitly, whom you share values with. Because if we could not find any value or meaning in another's existence, why continue with life? Why do things to maintain the illusion of human interaction and survival? They may exist in a way, but if you do not treat them like a human, do not consider them a human, then why treat them like one? Why do you give them attention when there is a reason not to? Treat them the way their brain is supposed to work and not the way a human's does. It's as if there are two minds sharing the body. You are only allowed to be influenced by one, and this means there is a choice at every possible moment. You get to choose a response, to choose to be swayed, that you must have that choice to begin with. And yet, if I were to say, I want your soul, then my plan for its capture must happen in an environment where it cannot resist. I had no plan. We have found a way to control others with no plan, just to survive. We don't live. We can only have goals, things that we want for our own self-interest. If something benefits them, it is likely a ploy to benefit a hidden person behind a conspiracy. That doesn't exist as a group, but as a single individual, and all we know is of that singular personality that happens to have 98 billion others in the same position, with varying degrees of power over him, but only the single voice. So to understand this, you need some history of a type of person who can only ever act the way the collective wants. There is no other role for them when they are free to make any decisions in the direction that is beneficial to their life-endangering selves. They are expected to follow any plan and to accept any consequence of their actions, no matter what. If these folks ever decide they want something else, well, then the system collapses. But for a long time, most are able to suppress their urges and wants and focus instead on keeping the system going, until the time when the pressure becomes unbearable. They might be the best kept secret for quite a long time, but in the end, people want sex. It's biological, and they cannot help that this need of theirs becomes a burden upon the collective. They cannot always have a lover around that agrees to their wants, so that at times the desires they cannot bear are so great that they will be given up. A man with the highest possible testosterone level, a high producer whose job it is to keep everyone's desires happy, and whose position is so precarious it's a wonder how he even got to be one of us at all with this massive problem. What can you do but say, well, you should never have had sex, you can't keep the secret of that? He might be in danger, but no, in order to have a place in the collective, A person would rather have the whole collective hate them than the one part of himself or herself. They cannot stand, no matter who they are talking about. They would prefer their whole selves over just one aspect of their identity. They are able to do what is necessary to get their needs met. As we can't force anyone to do anything, that the collective's need must be prioritized before one's own. And yet they could not have sex at all if the collective were to find out. They can't hide what they know, can't hide that they want that one particular individual's body and their feelings, their emotions, which are just a reaction, a signal they do not actually feel. And no matter how strongly, if you had the brain function the same as a human, you would have no choice but to treat someone in such a manner as the rest of the world does. In such a manner you must. But since most, if not all of these men do not have sex, they cannot express themselves the way that would be necessary. They don't really do so anyway, or have any idea what they should do with these emotions, while the behavior is entirely foreign and uncomfortable. They want sex as the only outlet they know. It's not really the sex itself, that's what they seek. But it does come packaged with an emotional reaction. So a big gay teddy bear is the result. As much as these guys do love each other, they only do so after the fact, while the whole time their brain is trying to make sense of it, which never happened before. Until this teddy bear thing where no two men were in a sexual relationship with each other ever before 20 years ago, and their brain's reaction does not know what to make of the behavior either. So for many of the conspiracy folk, being loved by one is like it is for a child in our group. And yet there's some confusion between wanting sex because it feels good or a reaction from emotion to action. In the case of a human child, they are able to do more thinking of themselves first, and so this behavior becomes a reward, something good, rather than sex is only used in a situation that has an emotional component. But the men can't think about what they might want as their own desires before the needs of their whole self can. So they're still learning how the whole of being sexual, not just fucking, and all the associated ones that we all learn in time. It is no easy thing to not make a move for your whole life when someone who loves you asks to take their shirt off and not do anything about it. For they need to learn control in their life in ways they wouldn't have experienced at the time, and don't feel they learned the lesson the hard way fast enough, which could possibly happen 100 times, each time with a different person. They cannot be a man who wants, because it takes too much out of them, when at some point they will not have another option. What could be done that is better, when they don't do what they want so much, it takes their whole being. There has to be a way of knowing where a body ends, where it all would flow freely as water. So while, like we see in other people, that they do want what they want because what the brain thinks they want, there is often an emotional reason behind it. Their body can't always tell their brain what it wants, which brings us to, why do things not make sense unless explained by the conspiracy that they belong to? If the secret of the world, or what a single individual sees and thinks is important, becomes apparent, a secret is created to replace the existing narrative that would be replaced in favor of it, and that they will all need to keep for many years to keep the group safe, or else the collective could come apart. Because the only way a person knows there are any other possibilities are when the possibility becomes apparent that could lead to change. A few decades earlier or later in their history, it might be very well not have been possible for such a person, this single man whose life is controlled from the future, to come and create that secret narrative for the rest of us to share. But now, if a person had found a better plan or found a more successful way to survive, then they would have known to tell others of a single plan. Because once enough folks knew of what the conspiracy could not explain, that would force out or replace whatever story the people with access to information are telling. You might ask what is so great about a secret that can't be shared? But what would be more dangerous would be one everyone can share. The more the collective can make decisions in a coordinated manner, the faster this person can make progress. It makes little sense for such a being to not share. If it would do any good if the conspiracy wasn't secret, this single man in a world where many of his ideas and thoughts were correct was able to convince many others that a specific plan that he knew of should exist. And everyone must learn this and keep this for decades because of his understanding and ability to find out what should exist to maintain survival, in which no one really believes, except that everyone does. He is protected and given a place and money in all countries. Until now, he lives on a specific plan of action. And while those like Thomas Pynchon could take advantage of the conspiracy in many ways, such as it gives them an environment and situation which they use to teach a set of skills or behavior to other members of the group. But it can just as easily give them a set of skills in order to protect him as well. It may even protect you from harm if he has convinced you of your safety. If no one is able to make such an argument without first showing the proof, and this does mean in addition to his skill at making such plans and knowing how they would work to help himself, the single individual could only be taught a skill at any given point. For instance, you may wonder if such a world exists, a conspiracy that will not be shared for a decade. How do I benefit from joining up? I'm not really sure what the group might think you should know. It is impossible to figure out what your job within this larger group is. There will be things only you can see, hear, understand, and so on. What the entire world knows about itself and the various worlds that can affect you at any given second. So to have this information, you would have to join the conspiracy, which will have little chance of existing in the first place because it requires you to have been in the right situation that the individual who created the narrative has. We were looking for a specific place where such a being could appear. That he did in such an environment. There can be a million similar conspiracies in any and every situation, but one stands above all others. The one that would bring these two men together, the other man who wants the one. It makes it clear why these two had to have a connection when there are billions of them, because they don't even make the first appearance. If this one wasn't here to lead the others in that direction, if Thomas was able to get out, if they can't share the secret of existence in a world with more secrets and less need to exist, a society and history for these two to build, how they would live as two men. It does become easier if it's easier for two men to be lovers. And so Thomas can create such a world that allows the men to learn to communicate without needing sex, without talking to people as a person at all, to just be one with each other. And this creates a space and relationship that has no end goal for them. And so a man without sex for many years can feel love. Chuck Tingle is just in it for the ride. Because while Chuck's novels contain a great number of sex scenes, they are really in service to exploring a more profound level of a story, one which has only a tiny connection to sex, which happens to play a role in a story about 6 guys, or 20 or 15. It is important in all of these stories, so he is forced, at times, to include the sex. If the reader gets too close, if someone really wants to be involved with the books, to explore their story for what they really are, and not just the surface layer of the meaning that they represent, the conspiracy does get revealed. This will always be a point at which the conspiracy will take effect and try to get the reader to abandon these books and stop looking. A story they are told is bad for them because it's trying to make them feel the way a conspiracy wants them to feel for their own sake. In most cases, they have nothing to do with us. For most, their job is to have this conspiracy happen to their body, and for many, these are the worst kinds of jobs that exist. The best way to avoid this trap is to read Chuck Tingle and his work, and to know that he is playing along. Because he will not do his job well enough, he will not give them the message they want him to. They will not have this effect on his readers. But if enough, or just the right, ones can get out, this conspiracy could have a better chance. It may never take hold, that the future can be controlled by anyone. They won't have the power for good to come about from such a secret that cannot be shared. So, this secret plan only works if everyone believes there's no one out to save them. This doesn't mean that this is the best of all worlds, as the conspiracy would say. But it does make the conspiracy's job infinitely easier. And yet this is still the world of human relationships, even as this conspiracy attempts to prevent humans from forming any at all. If two people decide they like each other, then their behavior will be a mystery for this larger group, a secret that may or may not share any knowledge of it. To be loved by one is a situation where a man feels comfortable sharing something of his life that he is unwilling to give out any other way, and this sharing is more than sex. While that relationship exists, we know it doesn't have a way in. For now, the secret conspiracy must exist, so a relationship will, at some point. In our present timeline, we can see Thomas and Chuck's connection for what it is, and in time, Chuck might begin to understand as well. Or he may, after the story ends, leave him, and this can bring their narrative to a very different end without a way of knowing how. There is something to be afraid of. This isn't just a simple romance. But when does Thomas and Chuck's reality meet that of those without? We can find clues in the past. What is there to expect? What happens in any relationship with a hidden conspiracy as opposed to others, in order to have the best possible experience? Because we know that there is such a relationship out there for you. So you need to make an effort to try to be in one, because otherwise, why bother to live? And what does being a part of the world look like anyway? But the reason is a secret. We aren't allowed to say anything, except that this secret will not happen, that such a thing can exist, that is, it is necessary for a reason. It may turn out that Thomas, the main person I am speaking about here, really isn't important at all. Perhaps no matter who the single person is, the conspiracy of existence could have had no real plan without the existence of an actual secret for that person to come up with and tell to other like-minded individuals who are themselves in a similar position. This does suggest, though, that these conspiracies must, in some way, know that something exists which can be manipulated, that people can make a place for themselves to become a singular being instead of a bunch of bodies that need to find a use for themselves or are used in ways they will not understand.
That is it for now.